Oakland is a city known for many things, the insurgence of music such as the West Coast jazz scene and the birthplace of the Black Panthers. Just as there are ups, there are downs however, as Oakland faces many struggles from poverty, displacement, food deserts, and rising property prices. A major challenge as to why there are so many issues here is the lack of localization with West Oakland. According to a 2010 census conducted by the city of Oakland, the average household income is $49,721. The average cost of renting in Oakland goes for around $2,800 for living, and for commercial spaces, it costs around $59 per square foot. This means that in order to rent a space that is around 770 square feet, it would still cost an average of $45,430 a year. What the heck? Another economic problem in Oakland is the food desert in the middle of West Oakland. The community of West Oakland are excluded from creating local economies through the difficulties that create local businesses such as agriculture and food sovereignty. Currently in the United States, 40% of the agriculture market is controlled by major industrialized farms, where the majority of the supply is provided by big farming families and corporations. That's a big number. The major issue with this is while they provide a sense of security, the quality of the products is lower than expected. The average miles that produce travels is an estimated 1,500 miles in order to be delivered at supermarkets. Talk about a big distance. Factoring that with the cost of transportation and time, it is clear as to why fresh produce becomes inflated and how it is not as fresh as one would think. Another major issue is the rising popularity of online retail spaces. With big corporations such as Amazon, Walmart, and Target, many would rather purchase goods through them rather than supporting their local businesses. This doesn't mean that they don't want to, it's rather much cheaper to do it. This is due to the fact that many people that create their own products have to pay rent and take care of their own families and pay for groceries. Therefore, you can see why they would have to charge more for a product that would simply cost much more cheaper at Walmart or these retailers. The major issue with this is that most of these companies are based outside of West Oakland, taking money out from the community. This is a prime example of an extractive economy. Many of the problems in Oakland are not for the lack of trying to create economies or the lack of labor, but rather the poor management that comes from the government. The community of Oakland simply cannot compete against the conglomerates that come into the community and buy out most of the spaces that could be used to strengthen West Oakland. Here's some good news though. With the problem of lack of spaces for local commerce, the West Oakland residents have found their own solutions, such as the rise of popularity of pop-up spaces, such as community centers or farmers markets, events that transform a space, typically a parking lot or street block, and for a day it becomes something different for the community. The community of West Oakland has attempted to reclaim some of the land for its people, such as the group Africa Town, a local community center that was created mainly centered for African descent. In 2015, the group took over 2317 San Pablo Avenue, creating the former Justice Garden, Quilombo. The group centered its efforts on fighting against gentrification, a problem plaguing the block. The group would serve free breakfast to the community and grow crops that they would give to the community or whoever was interested in them. To many, this garden served as a hub that African Americans in the community could say was theirs. Unfortunately, the site was taken back by its owners in order to be sold to luxury developers, as well as part of the city's redevelopment plan. The garden site is to become a luxury apartment project, and unfortunately, nearby parcels are set to be developed in the same manner. So here's a burning question. What could we as designers do or propose in order to create a regenerative economy, or community at the very least? Our proposal for the site and the new property strategy aims to set a subdivision strategy for the current lots to make the spaces and land more accessible. Whoa. Before we move on, let's talk about the property strategy. The site at San Pablo Avenue consists of 63,000 square feet, 12 parcels, and 8 buildings. Currently, there are only 4 mainly active buildings and 5 vacant parcels. The challenge with the site is the lack of affordability and space needed, with each color representing a type of space. So what if instead walls were introduced that allowed for a fragmentation of the units within, creating spaces that could be used as the tenant dictates? The addition of the walls create these pockets of spaces that allow for unconventional yet effective fragmentation of the spaces. By doing this, we enable the community to be creative with the spaces that they make, whether they want to set up in a specific way or in another way. Some might want to set up in a conventional style. Others might want to think outside the box for the creative spaces. Think about this for a second. Should someone that is creating and selling abstract art have the same type of space as someone like let's say an accountant? Still don't understand? Well, let me explain it like this. You want to start a shirt printing business and only require a space of about 300 square feet. Most units for rent have much more space than you really need, and with the high cost of rent, it makes it harder to make a profit. At our site, not only could you rent out the spaces you really need, but you could be located next to a business that could influence, collaborate, or even join your own business. On top of that, if you needed to expand, the fragmentation will allow for accommodations without interrupting, costing too much, or detaching from the community. Our proposal for the project program would be divided according to the people, not us, and how they want to use it. Currently, there are 8 major uses for these spaces: community garden, retail, cultural spaces, creative spaces, temporary housing, fitness space, housing for the current tenants, office spaces, and a local liquor store that currently resides at the end of the northwest corner of the site. The main idea for this project is to create a local economy that could influence, help everyone around. Now you may be wondering, why you use diagonal walls in order to create these spaces? Well, the reason for this is to create moments within the space that allow you to peek into the spaces, to be connected with your neighbors, without having to be worried about the acoustics and the concern of privacy. Another design idea in our project is the different levels that come within the spaces, such as the gallery space having higher ceilings, for the ability to be used as acoustical use, or the smaller office spaces to make the business more private. The project remains very similar to what already exists in San Pablo, and this is to acknowledge the history of the site. Remember, the site belongs to the community and not the city of Oakland. We also believe that some of the spaces don't need any work done, such as the liquor store at the corner of the project. They are thriving in their own way, and they're doing great, so why interrupt that? That's why we decided to leave it as is. The lack of fencing around the project is to allow residents of West Oakland to come and go, to feel invited and to explore. And because the site itself can be laid out in a more complex way, this will also help to deter from interruption from the outside world. What all this means is that we encourage the curious mind to wander around without distracting those hard at work. That is why most of the private spaces would be recommended for higher levels, like the artist studios and the private offices. We do not want to create something that it's going to feel as if it's taking away from the community, but rather we want to create something that is going to help the community and strengthen it, creating a regenerative economy.
We went after midnight, I kept just waiting.
A cave where all these animal-headed creatures travel between two worlds. So they go from the representational world to this analog mesh underworld where they're hiding.